And Starliner has performed its final departure burns from the International Space Station, and it is on its way back to Earth. Good afternoon, and welcome to our live coverage of Starliner's return home. I'm Lauren Seabrook with Boeing.
And I'm Brandy Dean with NASA.
And Brandy and I are coming to you live from here in Mission Control in Houston, where we have just heard that we are goes across the board for our Deorbit burn that will be coming up here shortly. And joining us in just a little bit, we have a team ready to go live from Starliner's landing zone in the western part of the United States.
Starliner's flight test began back on May 19th when it launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida aboard an Atlas V rocket. There's a replay of that launch there. After completing a series of technical demonstrations and engine firings to adjust its course, Starliner arrived at the space station and docked with the orbiting lab the next day on May 20th. Starliner's return to Earth will mark the completion of this uncrewed flight test and another milestone for both Boeing and NASA's commercial program as we work toward increasing our capability to launch humans to the space station from the United States.
And earlier today, Starliner's incredible suite of systems powered up, and the spacecraft began its departure procedures in preparation for its journey home. Teams here in Houston, Florida, and New Mexico have been monitoring the spacecraft as it autonomously undocked from the International Space Station this afternoon around 1:36 p.m. Central Time, and it was flying about 257 miles above Singapore. It then began a series of departure burns to move away from the station, and it was quite the sight.
Great replay there. Following Starliner's launch on the 19th, the teams here on the ground did see some unexpected behavior from some of the spacecraft's orbital maneuvering and attitude control, or OMAC thrusters, as well as its reaction control system thrusters. Specifically, two of the OMAC thrusters shut down early during Starliner's orbital insertion burn, and later in the flight, a couple of reaction control thrusters shut down early as well. However, Starliner has a total of 20 OMAC engines and 28 reaction control system jets, so there's plenty of redundancy to draw from.
And we still want to learn as much as we can about what caused those thrusters to shut down, however. So after the Starliner exited the ISS approach ellipsoid earlier today, we sent some extra engine commands to try and gather just a little bit more data on how those thrusters are behaving. The flight controllers had Starliner command both of the OMACs that shut off prematurely, as well as 6 of the reaction control system thrusters, including the 2 that stopped firing early on our first day in orbit.
After exiting the approach ellipsoid, each engine was commanded to fire individually, not all at once, starting with the OMACs. These thrusters are located on a service module, which we will be jettisoning shortly after today's deorbit burn. So the crew module can then make its way back to the Earth alone. So this was our last chance to check those systems out before we got rid of the service module.
And those engine commands took place around 3:25 Central. It wasn't a pass-fail test, but really meant to gain just as much data and understanding of the service module before it's allowed to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. I'm sure that our engineers will appreciate the information as we prepare the next service module for our upcoming crew flight test.
For the deorbit burn, though, to ensure that everything goes exactly as planned, the ground teams have disabled the 2 OMACs that previously shut down and will only use the OMACs that we have complete confidence in. Based on the results of the test, however, the flight controllers decided to re-enable the 2 reaction control system thrusters, and we will have a full suite of 28 RCSs available. While there are no astronauts on board the Starliner today, the flight test brings us one step closer to a crewed flight test in the coming months, and we cannot wait to see NASA astronauts safely arrive at the International Space Station and then later return back to Earth as the Starliner's very first astronaut crew.
Of course, as Brandy just mentioned, because we had no astronauts on board, we had a little extra passengers, Jebediah Kerman, part of the Kerbal space program, which a lot of people were excited to see there as our gravity indicator, as well as Rosie, the Rocketeer, of course, named after Rosie the Riveter. She was our ATD device, and you may remember from our last flight, she had many sensors that were on her, and we were able to gather a lot of data about what the ride is like inside Starliner. And because we were able to get so much data from Rosie last time, we were actually able to move those sensors to other parts of the spacecraft this time. So now we'll have a better idea ahead of our crewed flight test how other passengers will ride in Starliner. Now, once we make the final burn to get out of orbit today, it will take about 45 minutes for Starliner to reach its final destination, the U.S. Army's White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. Right now, we're told we are good weather-wise. There are scattered clouds about 25,000 feet above the landing zone. It's pretty hazy with about 8 miles of visibility. Winds are out of the southeast, peaking around 7 knots, which is well within the acceptable limits. So here's a look at our full landing sequence for Starliner.
Starliner begins the undocking process 1 hour before actually leaving the International Space Station. If all goes according to plan, the spacecraft will be back on solid ground in under 4 hours. Once the NASA docking system, or NDS, is powered up and favorable weather at the landing zone is confirmed, the main hubs holding Starliner in place release. Short booster firings continue nudging the spacecraft further away until it exits the 200-meter Keep sphere roughly 21 minutes later. But Starliner will not leave the space station's vicinity that quickly. 26 minutes after departure, the spacecraft will first fly above the station, collecting high-quality imagery of both the laboratory and Earth in its background. Then, 51 minutes after undocking, Starliner conducts the departure initiation burn and leaves the approach ellipsoid. At this point, Starliner is speeding toward Earth and setting up for a successful landing.
That again was a look at the landing sequence that's coming up. We are now 11 minutes away from today's deorbit burn for Starliner. That's coming up at 5:05 p.m. Central Time and will last about 58 seconds. It's going to slow Starliner down by 285 miles per hour, which will drop it back into the Earth's atmosphere and put it on its way to landing at White Sands.
And we are doing our best to establish a good signal with our team that is out at White Sands today. It can be a little difficult to get a great signal depending on where they are in the desert. So we do have a team of 3 people who will be coming to us live, 2 folks from the Boeing side and 1 person from the NASA side who will be out there in those White Sands bringing us a look at what the convoy looks like. They are setting up the convoy, and actually I'm told now we do have them. So we are going to go out live to our colleagues Dan Hewitt from NASA Public Affairs and Rosa Banuelos and Megan Gessner from Boeing. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Lauren. It's great to be with you. We are currently, again, here at our landing site at White Sands, New Mexico. It's a really warm day out here, but the team is staying hydrated as we wait for Starliner to come back home during its orbital flight test 2 mission. As you mentioned, we are having a difficult time establishing a good connection, but as we continue to troubleshoot, we will come back to you, hopefully with some live feeds. The team is right now getting ready in the convoy position. We are establishing the different teams, and as soon as that crew module lands and all of its parachutes and all of the parts have jettisoned, we will begin the recovery operation.
Yeah, we have an initial staging point that we were actually out here on Monday, and we were able to do some practice runs with the teams as they just have continued to prepare for this moment. And we got a late change last night. It moved us about 8 kilometers further north from all of our gear, which was not able to move with us. So as Rosa just said, we'll be in and out with video probably, but you've got a couple of other assets that should allow everybody to see Starliner make its way home. And once we get in closer, we'll be able to walk you through all of the different teams, each one color-coded with a very specific job for this recovery. And again, as we get closer, we'll be able to break all of those down for you.
And again, as I mentioned, we'll continue to bring you those live views. The landing and recovery operations will begin at a 500-foot mark, and then we'll move over to the 120 feet as we move forward to the crew module. So again, we'll keep bringing you some live updates from our landing site here at White Sands Missile Range, and I'll toss it back to you, Lauren.
Rosa, Dan, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And it looked like we did have a shot there seeing the White Sands. Yeah, let's go back to it there. So we are seeing some of the convoy that will be lining up and headed in to be the first to be on site there once Starliner makes its landing there in New Mexico.
Definitely looks like a beautiful day for a Starliner landing.
Yeah, really the weather, they said, cannot be better. We're in a good spot.
To get in place for that landing, Starliner completed a series of departure burns and choreographed procedures, as we mentioned earlier, that slowly moved the spacecraft further and further away from the International Space Station. And at this point, the Starliner spacecraft is well below the space station and quite a few miles ahead of it as well. Those initial smaller burns ensured that the Starliner is a safe distance away from the space station before it performs the deorbit burn, now 7.5 minutes away. That's, again, is going to bring it out of orbit and put it on track for today's landing.
And those graphics there in the scene really give you a good idea of the very coordinated and synchronized sort of dance that Starliner does to move away from the International Space Station and start its journey home. Flight Director Mike Lammers and his team are expecting Starliner's orbital maneuvering attitude control thrusters, which we also call OMACs, to fire around 5:05 p.m. Central Time, pushing the spacecraft out of its orbital flight path and on its journey home. This deorbit burn will set us up for a touchdown time of about 5:49 Central or 4:49 Mountain Time out in White Sands, New Mexico. Control teams in Houston will begin powering off Starliner's radiators and solar arrays as the spacecraft will no longer need that. It has enough power to get home at that point, and the sublimators will take over cooling. Those sublimators use water to cool the cabin. Starliner is now also in the correct attitude for its upcoming deorbit burn. At this point, the service module and the crew capsule are still attached to each other, but once again, that service module's 4 orbital maneuvering and attitude control engines will power that deorbit burn, allowing them to separate safely. Those engines are each 1,500-pound class thrusters, meaning that this burn will take about 6,000 pounds of thrust, slowing Starliner from its current orbital velocity and bringing it back to Earth's atmosphere, ultimately, again, touching down out there in White Sands, New Mexico.
We've still got a little over 5 minutes to go before we do start that deorbit burn, which again will last 58 seconds. Right now, Starliner is about 264 miles above the Southern Ocean, just about to reach the southernmost portion of this final orbit around the Earth, a little southwest of Australia.
And on Starliner's last flight, we were able to prove some pretty major test objectives that we could safely launch and land. And this flight was all about kind of everything in between. And we do have a long list of objectives that we have met so far. Let me just go through some of these things. The vestibule was pressurized, getting Starliner equalized to the same pressure at the ISS. Starliner's intervehicular activity, or IVA hatch, was opened. Joint ventilation with the ISS was established, which is basically just pumping in air from the ISS and then letting Starliner's air flow out. The spacecraft batteries were recharged from the station's power. Docked telemetry paths and file transfers were verified, and that gave us the opportunity to retrieve data while still there at the ISS and docked instead of waiting to return home. So really vital information that our engineers were able to get back here on the ground.
It's a little more than 4 minutes to go until deorbit burn. We did hear that NASA's WB-57 aircraft did arrive at the landing site. They're now in a holding pattern waiting for today's landing, which itself is about 48 minutes away now. Again, that's coming up at 5:49 p.m. Central Time. That's 4:49 there locally at White Sands. That is going to provide us one of what we hope will be several views of landing for you. And the teams here on the ground also reporting that Starliner is in a good configuration for the deorbit burn. Still 3 minutes and 40 seconds away.
And once Starliner does make that deorbit burn, it will be about 44 minutes from that point until touchdown. So right now, about 47 minutes away from that landing.
Just 2 minutes to go now until Starliner's deorbit burn. That engine firing will begin at 5:05 p.m. Central and last 58 seconds, using 4 orbital maneuvering and an attitude control thrusters to slow it down by 127 meters per second or 285 miles per hour, enough to drop it out of orbit back into Earth's atmosphere and begin making a beeline to New Mexico.
One minute to go until that deorbit burn.
Thirty seconds left. Ten seconds to the deorbit burn. 3, 2, 1. And the team here on the ground reporting that the orbital maneuvering and attitude control thrusters are firing, slowing Starliner down as the capsule begins its journey back to Earth. Again, this lasts for 58 seconds and slows Starliner down by 285 miles per hour. "30 seconds now into the burn. You can see here on this graphic those thruster firings being depicted. 10 seconds left. As those OMAC thrusters are firing, small reaction control system thrusters are doing the same, keeping the spacecraft in the correct position for the burn. And confirmed engine cutoff here on the ground. Flight controllers here in the room are reporting a good deorbit burn. Starliner is on its way home. With the deorbit burn complete, Starliner is going to be moving into the correct attitude for the service module separation next. For the deorbit burn, Starliner moved into an orientation that allowed its thrusters to fire against the direction of travel, like trying to swim against the current of a river. Now that that's done, it's adjusting so that its thrusters will be pushing it further along the direction of travel and helping the crew module move quickly away from the service module once the service module is jettisoned. That jettison is going to happen in just a couple minutes now, or about a minute, at 5:08 p.m. Central Time.
We are coming up on that service module separation.
You can see Starliner moving into the right attitude on this graphic. Satellite handover right now. That's why the text on the screen went green, but we expect to have the service module separated by the time we get it back.
And we have service module separation. During disposal, that service module will re-enter over the Pacific Ocean while the crew capsule continues on its path to New Mexico, where our Boeing and NASA teams are waiting to recover it. Starliner is now angling itself and its heat shield for re-entry. Entry interface is coming up next in about 16 minutes from now. That is the hottest part of re-entry, with Starliner's heat shield reaching 3,000 degrees. To protect Starliner from those heat loads, the spacecraft has what's called an ablative heat shield, meaning the outer surface of that shield heats up to a gas, which then carries the heat away from the crew module through convection. And at entry interface, the heat shield will handle those temperatures of about 3,000 degrees. And I've heard engineers refer to this as a game of threes because as I said, that the heat shield will handle the 3,000 degrees, but then it will convert that heat to about 300 degrees with only 3 inches of ablator. So if there were any crew on board during this time, even the hottest part of re-entry, the astronauts would really not feel anything above about room temperature inside the spacecraft. when Starliner returned home from our first orbital flight test, the crew capsule landed with 2 black stripes up the side of it, and that just indicates that the heat was ablated as intended. So we do expect to see the same thing on the crew module again today. Also, since that flight, we've added a cover to our NASA docking system to protect through that re-entry so that we can use it over and over again on our reusable capsule.
While there's a few minutes of quiet, we are going to toss to our teammates who are out in the New Mexico desert. We've got an update from them coming now. Dan, Rosa?
Hey, thanks, Brandy. Rosa and I here, we're happy to get a connection as, again, we had to do a little bit of rearranging, but we're out here. We're ready. The team's very excited. We've been following along. We heard the deorbit burn happen, and we're real excited to see Starliner. It's going to be coming in over the mountains just over there. Pretty soon we're going to be seeing it on the horizon.
That's right, Dan. As you can see, the team behind us is getting ready. Our individuals who will be wearing the hazmat suits are putting those on. Our gold team will actually be wearing these on as they approach the crew module. They are going to do a visual safety assessment to make sure there's no potential hydrazine leaks. They'll be using special devices to do a quick reading, and then they will let the rest of the team know that it is safe to proceed. The team has been out here for a few days preparing, setting up equipment. They've done a couple mission dress rehearsals, and we are definitely ready to go. Again, once the crew module has landed and all those parts have jettisoned and landed, we will move up to the 500-foot mark and then proceed to 120 feet and then move on to the crew module.
Yeah, and as Rosa says, so gold team's first one in. We said everybody's color-coded. We've got a silver team. They're responsible for picking up parachutes, any other items like the forward heat shield that jettisons off. We've also got a red team. They've got all of our fire rescue. They've got the access platform for Starliner. They're also going to be the hatch open and NASA cargo folks who are also on hand here.
You know what, Dan, something I do want to point out, we're standing at a very historical location. In 1982, the shuttle landed in the same location here at White Sands Space Harbor. And you know what, Starliner can now be part of that rich history, as again, we're bringing Starliner home after being at the ISS. And again, we're all very excited here. It's warm, but you know, that's not bothering us at all. We're ready to recover Starliner.
I prefer this immensely to last time when it was about 19 degrees out here, so this is a lot more manageable. But so we're going to get into our cars very quickly, and the team's going to, again, we're going to hang out here. We're kind of at the outside of a big circle that's cleared here at White Sands prior to.
That was Dan Hewitt out in the New Mexico desert, giving us an update on the activities that the landing and recovery teams are going through to get ready for today's 5:49 p.m. Central Time or 4:49 p.m. Mountain Time landing. As you can see, a little bit of technical difficulties, but we do hope to hear more from them before the day is over.
Yeah, we will just hang with them a little bit, go in and out when we can. That signal can be difficult out there in the desert where there's not much around. So when we do have a healthy signal, we'll go out to them. And if we need to take a phone interview from them, we can do that as well. We have some options there. So also want to mention, you may have noticed they had on sunglasses. Besides the fact that it just looks cool, they are actually wearing those for safety today. That white sand out there can actually do some damage to your eyes, so it's important that they have on sunglasses while they're out there. And you can see some more of our crew there setting up alongside the convoy and waiting to recover the spacecraft.
While we continue to see some of the shots from the landing and recovery team out in the desert, I wanted to give you kind of a rundown of what to expect coming up between now and that 5:49 p.m. landing. We mentioned earlier that the next big milestone was going to be entry interface. That's when Starliner will begin to feel the effects of the atmosphere. That is still about 17 minutes away. Should happen around 5:33 p.m. And then the plasma should start to build up around 5:35 p.m. We'll be through it by 5:40 or so, and then after that, 5:44, just 5 minutes before landing, we'll see Starliner jettison its forward heat shield around that has been protecting the parachutes from the intense temperatures of re-entry. Then when Starliner is still about 30,000 feet above the ground, the spacecraft's parachute sequence will begin. 2 drogue parachutes will begin slowing Starliner down, and then they'll detach and make way for the main show, the 3 massive parachutes that will take Starliner all the way through landing. While they continue slowing Starliner down, when the spacecraft is just 3,000 feet off the ground, the base heat shield will jettison and expose Starliner's airbags. At touchdown, those airbags absorb the initial force of landing, cushioning the spacecraft for a soft, safe return to Earth. Starliner has been engineered to be a reusable spacecraft with a turnaround time from landing to launch of about 6 months, and this landing on land capability will help Boeing stay on that timeline.
And Brandy, besides that turnaround time, another major benefit of a ground landing is that our team has the ability to get crew out of Starliner within really 30 minutes of touchdown, and they can also get the cargo out of there within 2 hours. So from a science perspective, that means that we can get experiments from the space station down to researchers in record time.
I'm sure there are a lot of scientists who are standing by just waiting for that.
Absolutely. Again, of course, no crew on board today, but you will see our crews doing a lot of things to prepare. It's great practice on this test flight to get us ready for crewed flight next.
Starliner continuing to make its way back toward Earth following today's 5:05 p.m. Central Time deorbit burn. Everything looking good, going nice and smoothly so far. Starliner is currently about 201 miles above the Earth, moving at about relative velocity of about 24 Machs, about 17,000 miles per hour still, but it's going to be slowing down quickly from here on out as we head towards the entry interface point. That's when Starliner will begin filling the Earth's atmosphere for the first time since its May 19th launch. That's coming up still about 12 minutes away now.
Starliner will be bringing back with it about 600 pounds of cargo from the ISS, including 3 nitrogen oxygen recharge systems, or also called NORS tanks, and hardware supporting tissue engineering research. These are those tanks they'll be bringing back for NASA, as well as many other things that we sent up in cargo, some commemorative items that will be headed back to historically black colleges and universities across the country. And ahead of the hatch closure, the astronauts on the ISS actually showed us the American flag that they're keeping up there. It's something we sent up on Starliner, and they will keep it there safely in a secure spot until astronauts return on Starliner's crewed flight and are able to retrieve it.
Less than 10 minutes to go before Starliner does begin to fill the Earth's atmosphere. As we have a few minutes, though, we're going to give you a good look at what to expect in the next few minutes in this package.
Now it's time to safely bring our reusable spacecraft back home. At this point, Starliner is flying with its solar arrays pointed toward the sun, recharging the internal batteries and keeping its systems powered through landing. With only 39 minutes before touchdown, Starliner's orbital maneuvering and attitude control thrusters fire for 57 seconds. This maneuver, called the Deorbit burn, slows the spacecraft down from orbital velocities and allows her to start falling back to Earth. At the end of the deorbit burn, Starliner angles itself for re-entry. But Starliner isn't ready to hit the atmosphere yet. First, the disposable service module will separate, uncovering the spacecraft's heat shield and preparing the crew module to make the final attitude adjustments to keep that heat shield pointing at exactly the right angle. Next up is the entry interface. At 400,000 feet above the planet, Starliner faces temperatures of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit from the plasma created by air friction around the spacecraft. But Starliner can handle the heat. At 30,000 feet and just 11 minutes before landing, Starliner jettisons its forward heat shield, exposing the spacecraft's parachute
That was a graphical depiction of what we hope to see live here in just the next few minutes. We're about 22 minutes away from Starliner's landing today, and you're seeing here a view from NASA's WB-57 aircraft. They'll be hopefully providing us live views of Starliner's return to Earth. They took off from Ellington Airport here in Houston just before 3 p.m. Central to make their way to White Sands. They've attended many landings now and often give us some great videos, so we're hoping to get some good stuff there. We are still about 6 minutes away from entry interface, and Starliner is currently about 140 miles above the Earth and dropping steadily just as it's supposed to.
Yeah, and that shot will be the very first time we will see Starliner as it makes its re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. And before we are able to take some of those live views from our crews there in White Sands, New Mexico. I can tell you some of the information we've been able to learn about the inside of the cabin right now is that the temperature is a nearly perfect 75 degrees. As I mentioned earlier, pretty much room temperature. So if we did have astronauts on board, that's what they would be feeling, although they would be able to adjust the temperature themselves anywhere between 65 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit based on crew preference, and whoever wins their choice of a little bit colder or a little bit warmer.
Starliner continuing to make its descent, now about 127 miles above the Earth. Losing altitude steadily. We've still got about 5 minutes to go before we hit entry interface, and after that it'll be another 5 minutes before we see that period of plasma buildup that we talked about earlier. Expecting that to happen around 5:40 and last about 5 minutes itself.
And after entry interface, things will start happening just a little bit quicker, and the closer we get to the ground, the more things will happen pretty fast.
Yep, once we get to the heat shield jettison, then everything is about a minute apart. It's a little hard to keep up with at that point, but it should be a good show.
As I mentioned earlier, we have been marking off a lot of test objectives that have been met during this flight test over the last few days. Another one, the vision-based electro-optical sensor and tracking assembly. You may have heard it referred to as VESTA, and flight data files transferred from the Starliner to ISS for downlink. We really had the opportunity to retrieve data while still there on the ISS instead of having to wait for return, but this time with images that were taken by our VESTA system. And some of the flight controllers that I've talked to really say that the VESTA system is one of the most interesting parts for them of Starliner, just the way that it is able to be the eyes of Starliner and really see it as if we would see it with our own eyes approaching the International Space Station. It is able to see markings on the space station and the shape of the space station to delicately guide Starliner into that rendezvous process and to dock with the space station. We were also able to evaluate onboard tablets to include transferring files from the ground to the tablet through the ISS assets. And so you can kind of think of this as, instead of carrying around a big binder of a bunch of papers, documents, they're able to upload real-time procedures to those tablets. So of course it's 2022, and a lot of things we did with paper in hand before, but even there on the International Space Station, astronauts use tablets. And we are just under 2 minutes to that entry interface.
"30 seconds to go now until entry interface." And we've reached the point of entry interface. Starliner is now 400,000 feet above the planet and beginning to feel the effects of Earth's atmosphere for the first time since May 19th. Due to the compression and friction of the air, the molecules generate a very hot plasma, which creates the red-orange glow you may have seen in post-flight imagery from other spacecraft. Plasma buildup actually causes a momentary and expected communication drop with the vehicle as the plasma briefly gets in the way of satellite signals. That period of plasma buildup lasts about 5 minutes, and we should come out on the other side of it around 5:40 Central Time.
And Starliner will enter Earth's atmosphere at 17 times the speed of sound, so that could actually create a sonic boom for any folks who are living in the area. It will then be slowed by parachutes to a speed you may experience, for example, while going down an elevator inside a skyscraper. If you can think of that feeling, that is what our astronauts would be feeling inside. The vehicle then comes to a safe, comfortable stop on landing.
And you can see in this view an idea of what track it'll be taking as it comes into New Mexico. It'll go over the Baja Peninsula and just a small corner of Mexico, an even smaller corner of Arizona before it comes to a stop in New Mexico. Or actually, probably just Mexico. Looks like it'll just miss Arizona, but it will be going over the Baja Peninsula and Mexico.
So if you're watching from that area, you might be able to look up and see Starliner come over.
Hearing reports that the landing and recovery team is receiving data from Starliner at this point. We'll have a few minutes where things are still reasonably quiet, and then a lot is going to happen at once with the forward heat shield jettisoning to make way for the parachutes to begin deploying. We're in the final stretch now, though, of the landing of Starliner's second orbital flight test, with landing now just 13 minutes away.
So there on your screen, you're taking a look at that shot from the WB-57. That's NASA's space plane that will give us a great shot as soon as we're able to start seeing Starliner as it makes its reentry. We are now about 12 minutes away from landing.
We are at that point of the flight where plasmas begin to build up around Starliner. That will last about 5 minutes. Should be out of it around 5:40. In the meantime, the flight control team had transferred to closed loop guidance initiation, letting Starliner have complete control of its own systems. Next major milestone once we get out of the plasma will be the forward heat shield jettison around 5:44 p.m. Seeing a shot here from ground trackers in New Mexico. This will be another one of the views we hope will show us Starliner as it comes in for its landing in about 10 minutes now. And this just a view of the desert, and this is where the landing and recovery teams have been getting ready to deploy out to the landing site once Starliner does touch down.
And on Starliner's last flight, we landed at night in the darkness. So this will really be the first time we'll have daylight views of the spacecraft after it re-enters and under the canopy of its parachutes. So it'll be a real sight for our teams there and for folks across the country. Our first time really to see Starliner coming down in broad daylight.
We also heard that the crew on board the International Space Station is going to be watching landing. They, of course, spent some quality time with Starliner since it docked to the station on May 20th and saw it off earlier today. That's Sergei Korsakov, Oleg Artemyev, Denise Matyev, and Chell Lindgren, Bob Hines, Jessica Watkins, and Samantha Cristoforetti. Once again, receiving data from the Starliner now that it's passed through that plasma buildup. Everything going well as it makes its way across this track that you can see heading towards a landing in the New Mexico desert. Teams on the ground reporting good trajectory.
And there are our very first shots of Starliner from the WD-57.
Starliner's still got about 8 minutes left in this flight and hasn't even begun deploying its heat shield yet. That'll start here in just the next few minutes. Still about 3 minutes away before the first parachutes begin to deploy, and of course before that we'll see the forward heat shield come off. But everything going well. Teams here on the ground seeing good data. And hopefully we'll get a better and better view as it gets closer.
And that shot there on the left side of your screen now from the ground tracker. So we have two views now of Starliner as it makes its final approach to its landing zone there in White Sands, New Mexico.
And the team here in Mission Control reporting that they've heard from the landing and recovery teams that they're also seeing the Starliner. They'll have, of course, the front row seats, but we'll try and piggyback on that with these views that we're getting.
We are just under 7 minutes away from landing.
Switching back to this graphic for just a moment as we wait for the forward heat shield deploy.
And we are starting to get a more clear view of Starliner now. We should be seeing the forward heat shield deploy here pretty quickly. And the forward heat shield has now jettisoned. That heat shield protected the spacecraft through those thermal loads during re-entry. And drogues are out.
Two drogue parachutes slowing Starliner's speed and drag. They're going to reef to a wider opening and slow Starliner down enough for the main chutes to deploy in less than a minute. Main parachute deploy just about 30 seconds away. View here from the ground tracker.
And mains are now out. We see 3 parachutes coming out here. Starliner has another 8,000 feet toward the landing. Those 3 parachutes are starting to inflate now. You can see them right there on your screen.
And the main parachute's reefing open right there, continually slowing Starliner down.
3 good main parachutes, looking good.
Starliner will be drifting down for another 2.5 or so minutes before it makes its touchdown, but all going smoothly. And we didn't just hear the rotation handle was released. That will help level out the capsule before touchdown.
And there goes the base heat shield right there in front of you. It just jettisoned. You can see it falling away from the spacecraft. It will reveal the airbags that will cushion Starliner's landing. And those airbags are now inflating. Starliner is 2 minutes, 40 seconds from landing. Actually closer to 2 minutes now. You can see those airbags right there on your screen, fully inflated, looking good.
Those will come in real handy when we have crew on board for the crew flight test of Starliner in a few months. Help ensure that the crew gets a nice, soft touchdown.
And those bags are filled with nitrogen as they guide Starliner safely back to the desert floor. Flight controllers here in the room reporting good airbags. Everything going exactly how we want to hear it. We are just coming up on about 1 minute away from touchdown there in White Sands, New Mexico.
Exact touchdown time will vary a little bit depending on the winds at the landing site, but everything's going smoothly. And I bet the teams there at the landing site are enjoying this view. Continuing to see views from the ground trackers on site in New Mexico. Just seconds left.
You can see the mountains coming into frame there. We're getting very close to the ground. And touchdown, Starliner. We're touching down in the desert of New Mexico, marking the completion of Orbital Flight Test 2. And that touchdown coming at 5:49 p.m. Central Time, almost exactly 6 days into the mission. Just a beautiful touchdown in White Sands this evening. Our landing recovery teams will now wait for clearance before making their way to the vehicle. And we can hear some clapping and cheering in the other room. And we are going to go live to our team now that is out there right at the landing zone, getting close. And we have NASA's Dan Hewitt and Boeing's Rosa Banuelos. Guys, how does it look from the ground?
Thanks, Lauren. It's hard to describe the feeling that the team here is going through. Again, we just saw those beautiful red, white, and blue parachutes deploy. We were able to visually see the forward heat shield, the base heat shield also jettison and open those airbags, and obviously they filled with nitrogen. So we're on the move. We're in the blue team vehicle. Again, we're driving in parallel to the historical runway here for the Columbia shuttle landing. Again, where the first stop is going to be the 500-foot mark. We're driving pretty slow here, about 25 miles along the white sand, gypsum sand. Once you get to that 500 mark, the first team will move the first team that will move into the 120-foot mark will be the gold team, and then they will do that first visual assessment before they give the clear for the rest of the team to approach the crew module. After that, we have the silver team who will groundly stabilize the vehicle. It will be sent a command to power down, and they will also recover the parachutes. They will also recover and save any frozen parts. And then after that team, we have our team, which again, we're going to try to attempt to give you some of those live looks as we get closer to the crew module. And then preceding that, we have the green team who will provide ground and cooling to the vehicle, which is really important to keep those crew sites safe from overheating. And then we have the red team, who is mainly made out of the Boeing medical personnel. And then we have the hatch opening and then any of the cargo removal. Again, we're driving pretty slowly. We're heading to the crew module and it upwind. The crew module uses a hypergolic propellant that when it does turn into vapor, it can be very toxic. So we take that very seriously. Safety is the number one concern and priority for the flight crew and from the team here on the ground. So when the gold team does arrive, they will be monitoring that throughout the whole operation. Again, the first stop is the 500-foot mark. And again, if you hear the rush in my voice, it's definitely a sight to see. A lot for all of the Boeing team here, it's definitely a proud moment.
And hey, I don't have a whole lot else to add. It was pretty surreal as Starliner just almost seemed to materialize in thin air directly above us. We were able to see it come down under both strokes, see those deploy, and see all three good mates. We were treated to what I believe was a sonic boom award. That may have been some of the pyro events, but that kind of announced Starliner's arrival to the desert here for us. And so as Rosa said, we're on our way in. As we get closer, we're going to get closer also to a lot of our transmitting hardware, so we'll be able to bring you some views. Might even have an eye in the sky as the teams move in around Starliner. So we'll talk to you real soon as we get in closer. Great to have Starliner back on planet Earth. Can't wait to see it up close and get the teams. And it looks like it's coming right into view for us. So we are still about a kilometer or more away, continuing to close in. And we'll be bringing you a lot closer views real soon.
As Dan mentioned, we can now see the crew module right ahead of us. We can visually see it, and it's definitely a great sight to see. So, Lauren, we'll toss it back to you, and we'll come back to you as soon as we get established a speed again.
That was Dan Hewitt and Rosa Buñuelos from NASA and Boeing, respectively, giving us a report from the convoy currently making their way out to Starliner as we speak. You heard them say that they were able to hear the sonic booms as Starliner came in for its landing at 5:49 p.m. Central, and we are seeing some views from cameras there on site, some of the same ones I think that gave us the views as it was coming down as well.
And here's a piece of information that I know a lot of people on our team will be really happy to hear. We are told that Starliner landed about 0.3 of a mile southeast of the landing site, which is basically a bullseye.
You can see those airbags that we talked about earlier that are intended to give crew on board when we have them a nice soft landing. All deployed as planned. That's going to be one of the things the teams are checking on as they do arrive at the landing site. We've got, as you heard, Dan and Rosa mentioning, we've got a pretty big group of people who are making their way out there because it's a pretty big job to recover a spacecraft once it is touched down from space. And we're also hearing from here in Mission Control that the post-landing power down of Starliner is in work. That's one of the key milestones in getting the Starliner ready for its recovery.
And our team just checked the cabin temperature inside. It is 74 degrees right now. Much more comfortable than our team out there in the desert. And you may have noticed just a few seconds after Starliner made its touchdown, the main chutes fall away from the spacecraft, and that just keeps those chutes from catching any wind that could drag the capsule, which obviously makes things easier for the landing team as they begin to make their way toward the vehicle and start their procedures.
Once again, if you missed it, the Starliner touched down at 5:49 p.m. Central Time. That's 4:49 p.m. Mountain Time. Crew on board the International Space Station was watching as it touched down, giving it one last proper send-off. Now we are just waiting for the recovery teams to get out to the vehicle. You can see, I think, it looks like we've got video from one of the cars here on the bottom right-hand side of the screen as they're making their way out. We last heard from them a couple minutes ago that they were still about 1 kilometer away, so they should be arriving pretty quickly. And then they'll begin the long process of getting the Starliner ready to return home to Florida.
One of the major benefits of being able to land on land like this is not having to battle that harsh salt water that could be, have an impact on the spacecraft in the water. And of course, this is a reusable spacecraft. We plan to reuse it up to 10 times. We place a great deal of emphasis on testing our systems on the ground and in space before our first crewed flight test, so our teams have learned a tremendous amount from this mission. We have also extensively tested our parachutes and airbags before this flight, so very happy to see them work nominally and as expected.
Starting to see some of the recovery teams arrive.
The very first vehicle that we will see on site is the command vehicle. They are at the front of the convoy, and where the recovery ops leader and recovery director, who are in charge of the entire operation, will wait to go in.
Power down of Starliner is still going on, getting everything turned off so that the team here in Houston can turn the vehicle officially, the spacecraft officially, over to the recovery team, who we can see is just arriving here in the top right-hand corner view. The recovery director is in the command vehicle, along with the recovery ops leader.
Now you see a lot of that team starting to arrive on site there. And our gold team will be the first to arrive up to the vehicle.
As you heard Dan and Rosa say, they are the first to the vehicle, so they do a sniff test for hydrogen, making sure that there's none of that in the air that could hurt any of the recovery team members. They'll be wearing hazmat suits to protect them from any they might find. Hopefully that'll be clear, though, and then the rest of the team members can begin moving in.
Those hazmat suits are there to prevent exposure to hypergolic propellants, and hydrazine is used as a propellant, and if it turns into a vapor, it can be very toxic. So they use special sensors to sniff for it, and then they're able to notify the rest of the convoy when it's safe. That team will also check the wind to make sure that the entire landing and recovery team is staged uprange from the direction the wind is blowing, just for an added set of protection there.
We also are starting to get some photos from the members of the recovery team. We've got one here to show from you from Bill Ingalls, NASA photographer, as Starliner was making its way down for that 5:49 p.m. Central Time landing. This again is one of the photos just coming in from the recovery team. That's a good indication that they are getting set up and starting to get a good connection back to us. Hopefully we'll get a few more updates from them as we go on through the recovery process.
And just a beautiful sight there to see those 3 red, white, and blue parachutes fully open. That gives you a patriotic feeling to see that there, and to think about really the fact that we now have a successful mission, and just kind of, think about what this means for our country.
Absolutely.
May be able to hear some clapping here in the room in Mission Control.
This team definitely feeling good about their 6-day-long mission that they've been supporting, getting Starliner up to the International Space Station and then safely back for this landing in New Mexico. Seeing here a shot from a drone on site with the recovery team. Much clearer than our other view. Very nice.
Yeah, we're getting now some close-up views of Starliner there on the ground.
And back with the recovery team now. Again, they are starting to get staged, and will be taking control of the vehicle now. Just like we have a flight director here in Mission Control, there's a recovery director on site there who will be leading operations.
And as I mentioned earlier, when Starliner returned from its first flight, we did notice 2 black stripes up the sides of the spacecraft. We've seen those as well on this time, and that just indicates that the heat was ablated as intended. We expected to see that. It's a good thing to see that. It means that that ablative heat shield did its job.
Ablative heat shields wear away with the heat and take the heat with them rather than letting it transfer to the inside of the crew module where the crew needs to be protected.
And you can start to see there some of the gold team making its way out of the vehicle, and will soon be coming over to the spacecraft to begin its checks. And we're going to go live now back to NASA's Dan Hewitt and Boeing's Rosa Benuelos, who are live on the scene.
Dan Hewitt coming to you guys live now. So we're just about 500 feet away, and the convoy has paused. And as we talked about, so the gold team is in there right now. They do a sweep up close around the capsule looking for any hydrazine fumes. Hydrazine, it's a hypergolic fuel The Starliner capsule uses it for its reaction control thrusters, which are only used during that re-entry period to control yaw pitch roll. They go in, make sure there aren't any leaks, any fumes, anything like that, before the rest of the team start to make their way.
That's right, Dan. As you can see probably in your camera views, they're dressed in hazmat suits, and they're going to do an initial sweep. They're doing that right now as they're walking around the crew module. You can see those airbags are inflated, and they're going to take their time to do that. Obviously, we want to keep the team safe, and once they do that, they're going to give the next team that go to proceed, which is going to be the silver team. And again, they're going to ground and stabilize the vehicle and make it safe for the crew to actually touch the crew module as well. So we're going to continue to see this live. As you can see, the parachutes are to our direction, to the left here, and the team that will be safing and recovering those parachutes will be the silver team as well. So when it's their turn to come in, you'll see them working off to the side, gathering those parachutes, doing their assessment as well.
Yeah, and they're going to be collecting up that base heat shield, which actually landed probably only about 200 feet off to our right, so that's super close. So if we were able to get some views of that on OFT1, and we'll do our best to get you some views of that as well. So after Silver Team's able to do that, you're going to start to see a lot of the convoy moving in. We've got a green team, which I don't know if we've touched on yet, but they're bringing a lot of equipment with them. They're going to put up an environmental enclosure. It kind of looks like a bounce house. It's just to go around Starliner, helps to provide it some extra cooling, and also just protect it from the elements as we're out here. As again, this vehicle is going to be reused. Any steps we can take to just kind of isolate it from the environment will help in that refurbishment. And they're also going to be setting up an HVAC system, providing some active cooling to the capsule, as once it's powered down, it's not using any of that active cooling on board.
And I did just get word that we are going to have the silver team move in to cut the riser, and that is the connection that is still connected to the parachute. So you will probably see that in your shot. It's practically like a string, and they will be going in there and doing that procedure as part of their recovery operations as well. So we're going to continue to see the different teams do their different procedures, and we'll report as we see different steps here.
Yeah, we've got a big squad also, the red team. They'll be bringing in probably some of the most visual hardware, a lot of the really big stuff. They've got what's called a MAP, a mobile access platform. It will look very similar to just a big yellow platform with some stairs. That's what's going to give them direct access to that hatch, as your hatch lead is also on the red team. They're also going to be driving up the medical truck. Obviously, we don't have any crew on board today, but we're going through all of the motions of this to practice just for when we are flying crew. And so they'll back that medical truck up, and that's what we're going to be using once we have crew on board. That's going to be kind of their first steps out of the capsule and into there. Also,
the hazmat has been complete. Everything is nominal. Again, this team did that first initial assessment, and they're going to continue to monitor for any potential hypergolic leaks. Again, making sure the team is safe out there from the crew module. And so everything's looking great out here. It's still very warm. As you saw us before, we're wearing sunglasses. It's really bright out here. And so we're protecting our eyes. We're keeping safe, drinking lots of water as we, again, welcome Starliner home from its orbital flight test 2.
If you're still with us, but we're going to go ahead and toss it on back as they're completing that assessment. We're going to get back into our cars and be able to move in a little bit closer, and then we'll rejoin you very shortly.
And you may have noticed there, as that drone flies over the base heat shield that really dropped away not too far from where Starliner landed. You may have heard a lot of clapping in the background here. Boeing and NASA leadership have made their way into mission control, and there is quite the celebration going on in here.
Flight Director Mike Lammers congratulating his team on a successful flight and touchdown. Again, that came at 5:49 p.m. Central Time.
And you can see our team in the hazmat suits there. That is part of the gold team. Again, they are making their way up to do the sniff test. A lot of times when you hear sniff test, you imagine they will actually be sniffing with their own nose, but that is not the case. There is a reason they are in hazmat suits. They have a device that actually performs that sniff test for them.
As Dan Hewitt mentioned, the ground team is now off and moving in closer with that sniff test coming through all clear.
You can see them performing that now.
Once they do move in, I think the silver team is up next, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's the silver team's job to ground the vehicle. Starliner will be powered down, but there could be some residual electricity. So before anyone can touch the vehicle, they will ground and discharge it. Just a great shot there. As I mentioned earlier, during our last flight, we landed during the dark and in the middle of the night. And so this is the first time that we've been able to see just such clear pictures of Starliner's crew capsule there in the desert of white sands. You can see that black stripe I mentioned, which is just kind of a badge of honor. It lets us know that the engineering done to protect that spacecraft during the hottest part of its reentry did its job.
Another photo coming in from that, I guess, the blue team, which is the communications team that's on site. This one again from Bill Ingalls, a NASA photographer who was part of that the landing convoy, getting looks like a photo just seconds before touchdown there.
And a beautiful sight just to see Starliner there with the backdrop of the mountains. I have a feeling this is a picture that a lot of people will have up on their wall. We will stay with our team out on at the landing site until the hatch is opened. That will be done by the red team, so that's the team we'll pay most attention to. And they are mostly made up of fire rescue, Boeing's fire rescue. The mobile access platform will get backed up to the hatch on the crew module, and that's able to give the team access there. If we did have astronauts on board today, this is the part when they would start to exit and be taken directly into the medical truck for any post-landing medical checkups. But we
Speaking of astronauts who could be on board, I think Butch Wilmore is there with the team. He's one of the first up to fly on board Starliner, getting a good look at what he could expect from a Starliner touchdown.
Butch telling us that he was very jealous of Rosie getting to ride in the commander's seat today, and I'm sure he will have some more words for her once he gets to get up close there to the spacecraft.
Definitely seeing some of those teams begin moving in closer now.
You may be able to tell some of the flags that are on each of those trucks that differentiate which team we're talking about. As we've mentioned many times, they are designated by color. And so that'll give you a good indication of which team's turn it is to come in and do their part to get the spacecraft ready for more folks to come in and eventually open that hatch.
It's only been 26 minutes now since Starliner touchdown, so you can get an idea of how quickly those that landing and recovery team can move in for a land recovery. Already through that hydrazine sniff test that we've been talking about, and getting ready to move on to the Silvers team's grounding electrical test. Team here in the room has already handed control over to the recovery director who is on site, and now they've got responsibility for Starliner.
The spacecraft landed just 3/10 of a mile southeast of the landing site today, which they consider pretty much a bullseye, exactly where we want to put her, down in the desert. Of course, being so important that we're able to show that our autonomous spacecraft can perform as we plan. And we have confirmation now that the Silver team has been able to ground the vehicle, and ground cooling has now been established. Our NASA and Boeing colleagues are still in a holding pattern right now as they wait to get the go-ahead that it is safe to move closer to the spacecraft. And once they do that and we establish a shot with them, we will go back out to them live to get an update on what they can see from their perspective. And you may have noticed there that our teams have backed away from the spacecraft. They are doing so after detecting a very low amount of hydrazine. We're just giving it time to burn off. And then our teams will move back in when it's safe and begin those procedures. Again, Starliner landed at 5:49 Central, 4:49 Mountain Time today, just about 41 minutes ago in the deserts of White Sands, New Mexico. We have several teams that will be moving in shortly to go through a list of procedures, starting with the gold team. That's the team that we did see just a short time ago doing that sniff test for the hydrazine. They do this with a device while wearing protective gear known as hazmat suits, just to prevent any exposure to that hypergolic propellants. Hydrazine is used as a propellant, and if it turns into vapor, it can be very toxic. So we use special sensors to sniff for it, and then they will notify the rest of the team when it's safe to move in. They also check to see which direction the winds are blowing so that they can make sure and set that entire landing team up uprange from those winds. Our team is a safe distance away from the spacecraft right now, and everyone that is near the spacecraft is wearing hazmat suits. That, of course, was the gold team that we did see wearing those hazmat suits. We have a live look from the drone again up in the right-hand corner of your screen, and a ground view there on the left side. And you may see an ambulance down there on the bottom of your screen. That is a normal part of the convoy. When we do have astronauts on board, they will be getting medical checkups as soon as they land. And a lot of practice is going into this time. Even though we don't have astronauts on board, there are a lot of things that our team is running through as if we do, so that they get some extra practice in before that crewed flight test. After the sniff test is performed, the silver team will move in to ground the vehicle. We did already have confirmation that the vehicle was grounded. Of course, Starliner was powered down already, but because there can be some residual electricity, it is important for that team to come in and ground the vehicle. You could see a look back in here at Mission Control, where a lot of the NASA and Boeing team members and leadership have moved their way in to congratulate the flight controllers on the mission.
Flight Director Mac Lambers, you can see there, right in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen here, talking to Steve Stitch, the Commercial Crew Program Manager. Lammers has officially handed over control of the vehicle, so his part today is done. He's now enjoying handshakes around the room. The team has really been happy to see Starliner safely home, all feeling good about the work they've done over the course of this mission.
Steve Stitch was asked the other day how he would describe the Starliner spacecraft, and he described it as patient, which I think we are all experiencing right now. We're practicing our patience as we wait for the crews to be able to safely move back toward the spacecraft and finish out some of those closing procedures before we see the red team open the hatch. once our team is back on site, and they do perform that sniff test once again to make sure that there's been time for the gas to burn off from the hydrazine. The green team will move in, and they will hook up the HVAC trailers to the crew module to get that ground cooling going. But their first job is to put an environmental enclosure on the crew module. You may have heard our teams talking about that earlier, that it kind of looks like a big inflatable or a big bounce house that goes up around the crew module there. They will wrap it around and get cool air into the module to make sure that the vehicle and its critical systems don't overheat there on the desert floor. Once again, we have a live view from our drone. Looking over the landing site, you can see the full convoy. You can see the parachutes that were cut away as soon as we landed after a few seconds. And there in the middle of that screen, you can see the base heat shield that was jettisoned and fell to the desert ground just not too far away from the spacecraft. This being a flight test, our teams have really learned a tremendous amount of vital information about Starliner as we had our first rendezvous with the International Space Station and then docked with the International Space Station. Spent a few days up there with the astronauts who were able to move in and take some of the cargo out and repack some of that cargo for us before Starliner undocked a little bit earlier today and made its way back home to the desert in White Sands. And you can see the gold team there moving back toward the spacecraft to perform another sniff test with that device. You can see them wearing their protective hazmat suits. That, of course, to protect them from any exposure to the hypergolic propellant.
While we wait to hear the results of this latest sniff test, we're going to toss it back to Dan and Rosa, who are there on site, a safe distance away, to give us an update. Dan?
Hey, thanks, Brandy. Yeah, we're still at about the 500-foot point, and hopefully you guys can hear me right now. So we're still at 500 feet away. As you saw, everybody did back away from the capsule, and that was by design. So the gold team was in. They detected a faint trace of hydrazine. So this is something they train for. This is something they prepare for. They gave the go for everybody not wearing those kind of hazmat suits to back away from the capsule while they continue to troubleshoot.
And we just got word that we are detecting 0 now, so everything looks like it's going in the right direction. Again, as you mentioned, this team has trained for many years. It's part of our procedures. Again, they're still going to continue to monitor those levels, but all is looking nominal now that we've gotten that read for 0. And you know, something great about this team is that this team is made up of many disciplines. We have most of our teammates are from all over the country. So again, experts in what they do. They've been training for a number of years. They've been here again for a few days, doing a few mission dress rehearsals, and so we are, ready to, deal with these things that come up. And again, we'll continue to go through our normal procedures. Yeah,
and I just got the word where it's 0 parts per million, so you're not getting even the faintest of traces of hydrazine at this point. So we'd already gone through a couple of the steps after they went in and hadn't detected any initially. One of the steps that the gold team actually takes is to install some covers on those thrusters that use that hydrazine propellant. So after that was detected, they were able to go through, double check those, and now we're back down to essentially 0. So you guys have also been reporting, so we did successfully complete the grounding of the capsule, and the green team was able to establish that ground cooling. So again, had we had crew inside, they're protected by a pressurized atmosphere inside the cabin from any hydrazine leaks outside, and at this point we've already established that ground cooling. So should any of crew been inside, they would not have been in any danger from that hydrazine, and they would be adequately cooled with that ground support hardware that's already in place.
And that hatch is stabilized and grounded. Again, the silver team, it leads that, it's one of the initial steps to ground and stabilize the vehicle, making it safe for the team to be able to approach it and touch the vehicle. So again, we still see some of the procedures going on in front of us right now, and we're going to continue to give you those updates as we receive them here on the landing site at White Sands, New Mexico.
Yeah, and so now that we're at that point where we'll start to move in, and I'm getting the signal now that it looks like we're about to start rolling. So we're going to toss it back to the team in Houston, and hopefully the next time you hear from us, we'll just be about 100 feet away from the capsule. Over to you guys.
All right, that is great news, and we are looking forward to checking back in with you when you get up close. And we just have a beautiful sight from the drone here, really up close look at those hazmat crews doing their job. They are a member again of the gold team, and this is something they practice extensively for. And really everything just worked out perfectly the way it's supposed to. They made their way up there, and we're now told that they have a 0 reading. So they will be giving the go-ahead for the rest of the teams to start making their way back over. There were some operations that were able to be complete earlier. We know that the vehicle was grounded, meaning that they were able to make sure that there was no residual electricity. You may have noticed the hazmat team was touching the vehicle. That is something they were able to safely do because that grounding did occur earlier. And we will have the green team moving back in here shortly. The next thing that we'll be seeing here shortly is the green team coming in to set up the environmental enclosure that will go over the crew module. Looks like a big inflatable. It will just set down nicely right over the top of the vehicle. And that will be to help them get cool air around it and inside of it, and to make sure that the vehicle's critical systems do not overheat. Of course, very hot out there in the desert. An interesting swing from what our crews experienced during the last flight when they landed at nighttime in the darkness, and also in the wintertime. It was quite cold. I believe it was only about 16 degrees or so. When Starliner landed around 5:49 Central, 4:49 Mountain Time today, it did land under 3 good main parachutes, as well as fully inflated airbags. And these capabilities are just something that help us turn the vehicle around in a much quicker time frame. Of course, this is a reusable crew module, can be used up to 10 times with at least a 6-month turnaround time. You can see the NDS cover at the top of the crew module. That is the NASA docking system cover, and that has been added to our vehicles since the last flight to further protect the NASA docking system during those hot loads as Starliner makes its way back down to Earth through entry interface. We do also see exactly what we expected to see with the crew module returning through that hot entry interface. You can see that black marking there on the left side of it. There's another one on the exact opposite side. And it's the same thing we saw after our last flight. These are just proof that the ablative material that is wrapping around Starliner is doing its job when it is able to protect the crew module as it comes back through the hottest part of its ride home.
Continuing to see live views from the New Mexico desert an hour after Starliner's 5:49 p.m. Central touchdown. Starliner came in for a landing across Baja Peninsula and the northwestern corner of Mexico before making it to New Mexico. And the teams there on the ground reported that they did hear the sonic boom as the spacecraft came in. And making their way steadily now through these recovery steps. Looks like the green team might be getting close to wrapping up. They'll be followed by the red team, which will we'll see open the hatch on Starliner. Give Rosie some fresh air.
You can see the gold team now moving away from the spacecraft. Of course, when we spoke with Rosa and Dan just a short time ago, they did report that there was a zero hydrazine on the meters, so a good sniff test. And we do expect to see them alert the other teams to start moving back into the spacecraft.
And all the teams, looks like now getting that go ahead to start moving in again. No hazmat suits necessary at this point, and they can keep working through those recovery steps.
So this is the silver team that has moved in now safely after that sniff test was done. They were able to ground the vehicle, which is part of their job. They did that a little bit earlier. And that's just to make sure that there's no residual electricity. Of course, Starliner was already powered down, but it's just an extra safety step. And we're starting to see the green team work to set up that environmental enclosure. And on the right side of your screen, the red team is moving in, and that's the team that we really want to pay most attention to because they will be opening the hatch. That team is made up mostly of Boeing Fire Rescue, and as you can see there, they're moving that mobile access platform in right up to the hatch on the crew module, just so they can have the closest access to opening the hatch. And of course, this is the team, had we had astronauts on board, that would be getting them out and moving them over to the medical truck where they would get post-landing medical checkups.
We're ready now to take you back to the landing site to hear more from Dan Hewitt and Rosa Benuelos to give you the latest information on what's going on out there. Dan, Rosa?
Thanks, Brandy. Again, it's great to be with you again from our landing site here at White Sands, New Mexico. It's been quite the eventful day. We continue to go through the landing and recovery operations as the team has been now, where we see the mobile access platform behind us. The medevac has been backed up to the crew module, and we will keep moving forward with the different procedures here for the recovery effort.
Yeah, we had a little bit longer wait at the 500-foot bar, so everybody's been following along. And again, that they were able to continue to sweep around. No hydrogen's been detected. That's why you obviously see everybody has moved in now to continue through our operations. We should be getting you some close-up views, I hope, of the capsule and the recovery as it's unfolding. You could see, so as Rosa said, the mobile access platform's getting into place now. This is kind of the yellow stairs. And we are going to be able to use that to get access to the hatch and all of the other items, all of the hatch operations. And then you may not be able to see it in every single view, but there's a large truck just to the right of the capsule from our viewpoint with a big Starliner on the side, and that's the medical truck. So it doesn't have a purpose today with no crew on board, but we're still going through all of the operations as we would if a crew were flying on Starliner, and that's going to get backed up. And that'll be really kind of the first place on planet Earth that the crew goes after they return in a trip on Starliner. So we'll see that back up, and then we'll get into some of the hatch ops.
And off to our left, and I'm not sure if you can see this in the camera, we do see those, again, beautiful red, white, and blue parachutes. Again, the silver team will be safing those. It will be taking care of collecting any of the other jettison parts. And to our right, also not in your camera view, is our decontamination tent. That's set up again for any potential exposures to the hazards. It has not been used, but it is here ready to be used in case of anything. So again, we are still moving forward with that, putting up that mobile access platform, and the team is still now, it looks like they're adding some of the, connecting some of the tubing for the cooling system.
And then we're taking a look. So yeah, you can see it almost looks like a moon rover, but that's just part of that HVAC system that they're using to provide some positive pressure inside of the capsule. And we also have, again, like an HVAC cooling system already hooked up to provide cooling inside the capsule. And you're going to be able to see a lot of the red team through all this action. And we've already got somebody up on the map getting some of that gypsum sand that is everywhere, getting that off. And everybody's color coded by our vests. The red team Again, that's a mix of Boeing medical, fire, a lot of different professionals. One of the key Boeing people on the red team is going to be doing the hatch operations. We're going to be going in through the side hatch. So again, Boeing has 2 hatches on Starliner. You've got the side hatch, and you've got the what's called the IVA. It's essentially the hatch at the very top. We use that whenever Starliner's docked to the space station, but for all of our ground operations, we're using that side hatch. It's been closed since it was on the pad out in Florida, and it's going to get open for the first time here in just a little bit.
That's right, Dan. As you mentioned, that Mars rover looking card to the left actually is a humidifier. And again, that's providing some of that positive air into the crew module and keeping any of that dust outside. And that's part of the purge system. It's really critical to keep the humidity levels at a stable condition inside the crew module as we are getting ready to open that hatch. So we're seeing some great views on our side here. Again, the team continues to work, continue to work on setting up those different systems. That mobile platform looks like it's ready. The team is up there working. There are procedures, and we
Looks like we have some technical difficulties. May have lost Dan and Rosa for the moment, but we'll hang on to see if we can get them back in a little bit later. But as Rosa was saying, the mobile platforms moving in for the hatch opening of Starliner, so the teams can begin unloading, among other things, Rosie,
and of course our gravity indicator, Jeb, or Jebediah, part of the Kerbal Space Program. He was a bit of a surprise for some folks. Once we docked to the International Space Station, we started getting views of him doing his job as the gravity indicator. And there on your screen, you can see the red team, which is made up of mostly Boeing fire and rescue crews. They are working to get the hatch open right now. All right, we are going to try and get back out to Dan and Rosa now. Guys, do we have you?
Hey, Brandy. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me now. One of the joys of working from a really remote location is you do run into some occasional technical hiccups. I will say we've got a bunch of certified wizards on the blue team here today who are bringing us all of these different views for folks around to take a look. But again, we're getting into our hatch operations, so the access panel on the hatch is getting opened up. There's a special tool that our lead hatch ops engineer is going to be using to get that open. The hatch can operate within a pretty small range of PSI differentials on either side, basically just meaning we need to make sure the pressure inside of Starliner is relatively the same as the pressure out here. And after they get that confirmed, we'll be able to get the hatch opened.
That's right, Dan. And once we're done with this hatch opening procedure, we will be going through the closeout. Starliner will actually stay overnight. It will be sent to a processing center and then make its way back to Florida. Starliner will be remaining here in New Mexico for a few more days as we go through those procedures. But again, we're very happy that we have Starliner back home here in New Mexico, and again that we've had a successful test flight in preparation for our next crew flight test.
And one of the operations we're going to be carrying out here is going to be cargo. We have some of the NASA cargo teams out here with the crews, and they're going to be able to move in once we get the hatch open. We've got a small amount of really time-critical cargo that's going to come off, including some radiation monitors and a couple of utilization items from our NanoRacks modules on board. Then they're going to bring out a couple of other items just to test that real-time cargo retrieval. When crew members are returning on Starliner, they're going to be bringing essentially pieces of themselves home with them. Crew will take a number of different blood samples, other things like that, just prior to their return, and those get stowed into cold bags or cold-powered cargo containers on board the vehicle. And that's one of the really critical science items that we return from the space station, and that's one of the reasons we're really excited to have Starliner come on board and add another cargo delivery service back to Earth. We definitely have a lot of vehicles bringing cargo up, but it's a much smaller number of vehicles that's able to return that cargo down. So some of that time-sensitive cargo will get brought off board today. The rest will remain on board Starliner until it gets to a processing facility, including our large cargo items that are coming back today. Those 3 NORS tanks, as people have heard about, the nitrogen oxygen recharge system that we use to essentially recharge the atmosphere on board the space station.
That's right, Dana, and I'm sure a lot of you are wondering if Rosie will be exiting the crew module, but she will not. She will be staying in here as well with the NORS tanks and make her way back to Florida. Again, the team is still working here on opening that hatch. As you can see them going through their procedures there on top of the mobile platform. There's a good look there at those airbags. Again, those fill up with nitrogen to provide that soft landing for Starliner, and again, a very soft landing for our crew for the next crew flight test. So again, a great day here for the whole Starliner team. As a native of New Mexico myself, I could definitely say I'm proud to be part of this orbital flight test too, and I know I share that same feeling with everybody here on the ground and everybody around the country and our teams in Houston and Florida.
Yeah, it was, I think I said it earlier, it was pretty surreal for Starliner to just appear in the air. At first it feels like it's almost above you, even though it was several kilometers downrange from us. Those airbags are really cool. There's essentially an airbag inside of each airbag as it inflates. There's also a central airbag in the very center of the capsule. That only gets used if Starliner is in a water landing. That can help with the uprating system on board the capsule, so obviously not used to. And we see the hatch is open.
It is open. That's fantastic news. Again, the team is now going to be making their way into the hatch to do some of those closeout procedures. We're going to have, again, some of our team from the red team start going into the cabin and, again, doing some initial assessments, and then, again, continue with those procedures for that red team.
All right, so 6:06 Mountain, 7:06 Central, 8:06 p.m. Eastern, Starliner hatch is open. So they'll get their first look inside, and again, we've got some cargo specialists that'll be allowed to move up close pretty soon, and they'll be able to start to offload some of the items that Starliner's brought home.
And we just got word that while Starliner was landing in White Sands, New Mexico, it was landing at about 26 feet per second, which is right what we expected. A very comfortable ride if we had astronauts on board. And then, of course, cushioned by those landing airbags.
Had a brief cutout there, but we are going to go back now to Rosa, who is with Mark Nappy. She's going to get a few post-landing words from him. Rosa?
Hey there, it's actually Megan Gessner out here in the field with Mark Nappy. And Mark, we did experience a little bit of a delay there at the beginning with the hydrazine link. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, the team comes in and has to check the vehicle out to make sure it's safe for others to approach. When they got in, they have these things called sniffers that come in and check for hazardous gases such as hydrazine. They came in, the thruster covers were put on, and they got a little bit of a high reading. So they fell back like they were supposed to and made sure that they could assure that the area was safe. They went back, checked again, and all of it had dissipated, so everything was safe. So the team reacted just like they were supposed to. It was a sort of a nominal situation that we sometimes encounter, and everything's back to normal, and the team is off getting the vehicle saved.
And that's why it's so important that we practice these types of things to ensure the safety of everyone that's here.
Absolutely, and today was just a perfect example of how well this team is really trained.
Absolutely. And, you know, today's been a long time coming. It's now finally landed. How do you feel?
I feel great. There's lots of emotion. First of all, really happy for this team. Some of these people have been working on this for 10 years and, you know, just waiting for today to be here so that we could have a successful mission. I'm proud of the team because they've just put so much work and effort into this. And then I'm really humbled because, you know, I'm standing on the backs of two really excellent program managers that got us here, and John Mulholland and John Vollmer. They have to be sitting home with big old smiles on their face.
Oh, I'm sure they are, as is a lot of the team that's here today. Have you had a chance to talk to anybody, any of the ground crews just yet?
Oh, a lot of folks. They're just ecstatic. You know, this was really something, seeing the vehicle come in and just gently come back to Earth and settle down on the lake bed here. So it's just been incredible. People are really feeling good.
Absolutely. It was definitely a beautiful sight watching it come down. And I know we'll hear a little bit more from you a little later today. I believe you're going to be a part of that post-landing conference that's going to happen on NASA TV a little later today. And for now, we're going to send it back to our friends over at KSC or JSC. I'm not sure where y'all are at. Lauren, Brady.
Thanks so much, Megan. Yes, here coming live from Houston in Mission Control. Great to hear from Mark Nappy, our program leader, the leader of our Starliner team, and really pretty awesome for him to be out there at the landing site with our crews. I'm sure it was a very exciting moment for him and everyone else to see Starliner land so delicately there at about 4:49 Mountain Time this afternoon.
We're going to keep sticking with coverage for a little while longer as the teams make their way through the post-landing recovery checklist. As you heard there from Dan and Rosa earlier, and as you can see here on your screen, they do have the hatches open. Still got about 2 hours left until sunset in New Mexico, so they've got some good working daylight hours to go.
And as Megan was talking to Mark Nappy, we did get a peek inside the crew capsule. We could see Rosie there in her seat. Everything looked good. She looked exactly in the place that the crew on the ISS left her just this morning as she undocked.
We're hoping that in the next few minutes we'll get to hear a little bit from astronaut Butch Wilmore, who is at the scene along with the recovery team. He, of course, expects to be in the capsule for this scene next time it comes around, so it'll be great to hear his perspective. Lots of activity still to observe as we make our way through these checklists. And we're going to go back now to Megan Gessner to hear a little bit from our resident astronaut on the scene. Megan?
Okay, it looks like we're live, Butch.
Oh, wow.
So good to see you here today. I know you weren't able to make it out here for OFT1, but today you are here in person. What are you feeling?
Oh, my. I mean, we all tracked towards from the beginning, from launch all the way through the mission, and this is what we were hoping for at the end, right? I mean, a soft, safe landing, culmination of all the hard work. I mean, you've got to give a huge congratulations to the folks at Boeing, all the way from Mark Dabney, all the way down, everybody that's worked the program, gone through some difficult situations, and now to culminate in this after a wonderfully successful mission. I mean, you couldn't ask for more.
Absolutely. Definitely takes a big team effort to have all this happen. You know, now as a casual observer, you know, I see one thing when I see a spaceship coming down.
And as we mentioned earlier, we have had some trouble with the signal going in and out with our live crews there on the scene. So if we can get them back up, we will. And if not, we will probably get one more check-in with our crew before we wrap things up here for the day. And you are seeing live pictures of our crews that are performing many of the closeout procedures and landing procedures that we've been talking about, making their way through that crew capsule after a 4:49 Mountain Time landing this afternoon, 5:49 Central. And it sounds like we do have the signal back, so we are going to go back out live to Megan Gessner and astronaut Butch Wilmore.
Sounds like we are not going to get Megan and Butch back, but we're going to hang with this view a little while longer, see if we can get another update from the team out there. We promised you one more last update from the scene in New Mexico, and now's the time. So we're going to go back to NASA's Dan Hewitt and Boeing's Rosa Benuelos to give us one final report for the day.
Hey, thanks, Brandy. Yeah, we'll get through it quick just in case we drop out. So all the hatch operations have continued. They're moving inside the capsule now, so we're about to get into the cargo operations. Again, we've got a small amount of cargo that's going to come off, some radiation monitors, and then a couple of other utilization or science items. And then one test that's going to be coming up in a little bit is with some of the safety hardware that's on board. So the crew will actually have a satellite phone that they can plug into the CM or the command module systems that uses its antennas that they can then make a satellite call if they land somewhere in a remote area without a recovery team. So we're going to do that test in a little while. A plane's going to fly overhead to test it out, and then that'll largely wrap it up for most of the team before we head back in.
That's right, Dan. And again, we've taken quite a bit of time and really carefully gone through these procedures. This crew module is reusable up to 10 times. So we want to make sure it is in good condition, and so we could expand the lifetime. Again, this crew module will be used for a post-certification mission. And so again, after tonight, it will stay here, and then we will take it to a processing center and then take it back in a vehicle to back to Kennedy Space Center. So again, it's been a fantastic day. The sun is starting to go down. We probably will see a sunset to our right here in a little bit. But again, it's been a little warm, but again, we're hanging in there. Everybody is still, excited to be part of this mission. And again, as myself, I'm excited as well to be here. And so it's been a fantastic day.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to see Starliner come down, to see all the operations, watch